Greetings and welcome to A Contemplative Reader, where together we will explore the mysterious, the spiritual, the mystical, and the otherworldly in various forms of literature. Today I will be going through my TBR for the season of Easter. Again, in this channel we will measure time by seasons of the church year, and Easter is not just one day, it is an entire season which lasts from Easter Sunday all the way up to the day of Pentecost, which this year is on June 8th. I have a couple of videos to record of books that I read during the season of Lent. Chronicles of Prydain, Book 2, The Black Cauldron by Lloyd Alexander, and Alien Clay by Adrian Tchaikovsky. But after that, look forward to some videos of books that I'll be reading over the next several weeks during Easter, starting with Pirate Freedom by Gene Wolfe. Again, Gene Wolfe is one of my favorite authors. This particular book is about pirates and monks and time travel and pirates. Quite a combination going on there. It's about 300 pages. Hopefully it won't take me too long to read through it, although with Gene Wolfe, I do like to dive into it and explore those deeper meanings that he always seems to include in there. And there's some subjects in this book that I think will be of great interest to me. So thanks to Sam of the channel iSamwise for referring this book to me. Next, Dancer's Lament by Ian C. Esslemont, which is book number 1 in the Path to Ascendancy series in the overall arching book series of the Malazan Empire. A few years ago, I read Gardens of the Moon by Stephen Erickson, which is the first book of the Malazan Book of the Fallen, and I enjoyed it, but I remember thinking to myself, that particular series is 10 books. I think Gardens of the Moon is like 650 pages, and they get increasingly larger after that point, oftentimes well exceeding 1,000 pages. And I just remember thinking that's not for me at this point, and it's still not for me at this point. But I've seen it recommended by other booktubers that I respect, that Ian C. Esslemont might be a good way to enter into the Malazan world in a way that's less onerous, perhaps, less daunting. So I'm going to give that a try. And so look forward to a discussion of Dancer's Lament, book of the Malazan Empire. Next, we'll be continuing on in the Edan trilogy series by Philip Chase. Again, I just put up a video of my spiritual perspective on The Way of Edan, the first book. Next is The Prophet of Edan. So I'm looking forward to continuing in that world which Chase has established and the many, many different spiritual and philosophical themes which he has included within it. This book is a little bit longer. It's 580 some pages, 591 pages in the paperback edition. So it will take me a little bit longer to get through this because I do like to take lots of notes on it to make sure that I give a somewhat thorough, at least, spiritual perspective on these books. So hope to get through that well before the day of the Pentecost so I can move on to the final book, Return to Edan in the trilogy, in time for the sequel book to come out later on in June. Then I hope to read Discovery by Jacob, Amy, and John Minton from, you might know them from this Talking Story BookTube channel. I just got an email notification, I think yesterday, that my copy will be coming hopefully fairly soon. So now I've read some of the copy on my Kindle, and this is just another example of the kind of wild mixture of Lovecraftian cosmic horror and humor that you can find in it. And this one has a little bit of a touch of the spiritual in it. So here's this quote. "I've seen how the world works, wars, famines, plagues, deaths, etc. Now I know there are many more than just 4 horsemen in this apocalypse. Who knew that the world was saving the best apocalyptic buckaroo until last?" I just find that to be really funny. Apocalyptic buckaroo. It must be a lost, hidden, or a little-known footnote to Revelation chapter 6. When the 7th seal is opened, that's when you get the whole apocalyptic buckaroo. Anyway, I'm looking forward to that. Next, we'll be reading Castle of Llyr, Chronicles of Prydain, Book 3 by Lloyd Alexander. Again, that classic fantasy series loosely based on Welsh or Celtic mythology. Just a wonderful series of stories, which are oftentimes classified as YA, but I found that there really is deeper than that, and some good fodder for spiritual discussion in those books. Then I hope to read Dark Force Rising by Timothy Zahn, which is book 2 in his Thrawn trilogy. Again, this sort of kicked off the Star Wars extended universe, now known as Legends, back in the early 1990s. Last year, I finally got around to reading Heir of the Empire by Timothy Zahn, and so this year I will continue in that series, and I did enjoy that. Again, I'm a child of the 70s and early 80s, so this continuation of the original Star Wars trilogy is right up my alley. Also, when I get around to summer, I often think of not only of watching Star Wars movies as a kid, but also Star Trek movies. And so I hope to visit the Star Trek universe as well during the season of Easter. And I picked this book off the shelf and thought this might be the one, Star Trek Log 1 by Alan Dean Foster. Again, a series of short stories which adapt the animated series from the early 1970s. And so this is a rather old copy that I picked up way back as a child in the early 80s at some point. Probably read back then, don't really remember it. So might get to that one again in the season of Easter. I will also be continuing on reading short stories by H.P. Lovecraft, again in the volume from Penguin Classics, The Call of Cthulhu and Other Weird Stories. Continue to put up YouTube shorts, which review each short story as I get to them, and then when I get through it, I hope to put up a more comprehensive video looking at all of the stories in this particular volume. Again, cosmic horror told about 100 years ago, so it's told in a different style, but I've been enjoying it. For all of Lovecraft's faults, which I am starting to pick up. Also, going back to Gene Wolfe, continuing to read short stories found in the volume The Island of Dr. Death and Other Stories and Other Stories. Again, much fodder for spiritual and philosophical discussion whenever you read Gene Wolfe. I also hope to continue to reading classic works of various kinds, including mythology, and I have talked before about starting the Kalevala, which is the epic of the Finnish people, a book which had influences on J.R.R. Tolkien, among other fantasy writers. I started it a few months ago. Honestly, just had to set it aside. Too much going on to really give it due attention, so I hope to get back to starting this one again during the next few weeks of the season of Easter. So a few, again, if the mood strikes me or if I get through all of this, not likely, considering my reading pace. A couple of other books I might get to during Easter. One is an independent book by Shawn David Brink named Bound by Blood, which involves demonic cults against churches, angels versus demons, brother against brother. Sounds right up my alley for a book that might be interesting to me. I hope to get to that. If not in the season of Easter, then shortly after the day of the Pentecost. And then last but not least, again, going back to Gene Wolfe for a third time, I have talked about how last year I did read Shadow the Torturer, the first book in the Book of the New Sun. Much like my experience with Gardens of the Moon with the Malazan series, I felt like it wasn't quite time for me to continue on with it. Really enjoyed it. Found a lot of spiritual fodder for discussion and contemplation in that book, but set it aside, hoping to return to it someday. And so I might pick up Book of the New Sun again during the season of Easter, reread Shadow the Torturer, and then move on to Claw of the Conciliator. Again, I want to make sure that the time is right, that for me to do that, as well as I want to make sure that I have something to contribute to the discussion online about Book of the New Sun. There are already probably hundreds of videos on YouTube about Book of the New Sun, and I want to make sure I'm not just repeating old ground. I think because of my background, I might have something to add to the discussion. Again, Gene Wolfe was a very deep Catholic writer and thinker, and spiritual guy and included lots of references into it. And although I'm Lutheran, I travel a lot in Catholic circles. And so I think I might have something to add to the discussion on that, but I want to make sure I give it my due time and attention and have the energy for it. So we'll see. If not during Easter, then sometime later this year, I hope. Again, let me know what you are reading. And I look forward to discussing these books with you in the coming weeks. Thanks for watching. Peace be with you.